This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I want to talk about representative democracy, learned political apathy, and being ruled by the minority. Representative democracy means that we have elections to find out that democracy is to be ruled by the majority. So the majority has the right to rule. But as we know in the West, most of the time we are governed, ruled, owned by a tiny minority. The head of the government sometimes as comes from a party that might even have less than 20% of the votes. Most of the time they represent a tiny fraction of the population. So why we have this political apathy? This political apathy, it's learned. It's not a choice. It is because we have this idea, this fantastic idea, that everything is about a choice. We just choose not to vote, which is apparently that's what it seems. But this is part of a process that we become disenfranchised from the political process and the political power dynamics, because we are led to believe that we don't gain, there is nothing we gain out of it. We just lose. We should take care of our business, of our professions, of our private lives and private interests and self-interest. That's what we are supposed to do in a capitalistic, liberal, so-called democratic system. So we learn, we are trained, we are instrumentalized. We need to understand these processes that exist in the socio-cultural environment, and they shape our perceptions. They shape how we perceive ourselves. They shape how we perceive everything, how we react. Because we are not trained to be analytical. We are not trained as to become really citizens of a polish. We are not aware of the responsibility of the political participation. We do not really take it seriously at the national level, at the local level, and at the international level, because we should all be internationalists. Because the only weapon, the only instrument, the only tool that we have against the concentration of wealth and power which is always transnational, and they count, and they count with they have the comprador class. They have all the means. They own the technologies. They own basically everything. So they have the mobility. They have the technological. They own the technology. They own the banks, the international financial system. They control it. So we can only be internationalists if we want to have some leverage. Otherwise, how do we expect to have leverage as ordinary citizens? So this this process by which we learned, like we are learned helplessness. There is this learned political apathy that legitimizes the rule by the minority, and then there you have this legal weapon they have. They can declare a state of emergency, and then we can all just forget about democracy at all, because the democratic rights are suspended. So and we, for most part, just take that reality. I mean, as if it's what it is, and there's nothing we can do, which is an absolute untrue. The problem with us is how to become conscious of the reality. How do we the way we frame the questions? It's what really matters in the end. That's what really matters, because once we become conscious, once we frame the problems in the proper way, when we make a sound diagnosis, we can find ways to fight back, to build organized, united resistance at the national level and at the international level. Because, as I said, we need to be internationalists, not globalists, not it needs to be a universal fight. But the concept of internationalism means that we have a view that others matter as most as us. They do. All of us matter because we are all in the same boat. We are all in the same. There is a common fight to be fought. For a civilization, it's not only about an economy. This is about having a civilization that is humanized and that really respects respects the boundaries of the Earth systems, but also understands what being a human, what it means to be a human being. And this is why the representative democracy, it's not the best system. Actually, it might be the worst system, especially when the outcome of it, in the liberal, democratic, capitalistic sense, produces political apathy. leads to political apathy, or even worse, when things go sour, as they are going sour right now, not right now, but it is a process. As I always say, that we need to understand anything and everything as a process, as part of a system, or of a system of systems, and as relations. That's how we need to understand reality, ourselves, life, nature, the universe, and everything else in between or beyond. Otherwise, we do not really understand, or we just are. I mean, it's impossible to understand if it's not go through these lenses. So we need to ask hard questions, such as: is it the pursuit of self-interest? Should it be at the center of of a meaningful and a purposeful life? One question that I would like: should it be? Should it be that we need to, if I mean, even I mean, let me think. How many people, especially in the MMT, modern monetary theory world, that they think they have this idea about the job guarantee. I mean, I'm not against that idea. It's nothing wrong. I mean, I understand it, but the purpose of life should not be a job. We need to be useful. I mean, it's obvious that we need to be useful to society. We need to reciprocate. I keep saying that the essence of a species like the human species, of the essence of our condition, the nature of our condition as a socio-cultural species, is obviously reciprocity, cooperation, solidarity, and trust, justice. And that's why empathy and compassion is an essential, they are essential traits of our species. This is not options. This is not something that we connect or disconnect. This is part of who we are. This was features that allowed us to survive. Of course, this is more for the inner group. That's why we have to learn, because we still have these tribal ideas, but this tribal frame, biological frame, and neurological frame. I understand that, but that we can, since as cultural beings, we can, and by cultural means that we have the power to produce symbolic languages, and through that, semiotics, we can organize. We are able to use our creative imagination and the power to communicate ideas, which is a social feature, to shape everything, how we understand ourselves, how we understand the world, how we understand and relate to others, and to the world, and to the animals, and to the trees, and to everything else. We change the story, we change the narrative, and we become a different species. Okay, our species is if we have the right story, and by the right story I mean a story with principles and values, which have to run not as cultural in the cultural world, they have to run. They have to be politics, economics, culture, arts, and everything. Science and technology. That's what we don't understand. That we cannot. Otherwise, we cannot only survive through cognitive dissonance. If we have and being psychologically destroyed, because we are made to believe that we are supposed to live in a world, in a society, in a civilization compartmentalized. Economy there, politics here, science here, technology there, and culture there. That is absolute nonsense, and it will ruin, and it will lead to our destruction. It will lead to humanity destruction if we do not change for a culture, for a narrative that puts us a holistic vision. It's a holistic perspective, perception of us, of humanity, as part of the web of life, as culture in the web of nature, which means that is sustained by the principles that govern nature. Because that's how we evolved as a species. Forget about these 10,000 years of imperialist civilization paradigm, which we were led to this situation by those that lack those essential traits of a human being, which is compassion and empathy. Without compassion and empathy, there is no justice, there is no trust, which are essential for us, for our survival and for our relations. But nothing is important. But we have been so when there are small communities, this is very important to understand. As small communities, it's easier to deal with these psychopathic and sociopathic traits, because as small communities, they can be controlled by the majority. But once we become sedentary or our communities grow, that is more difficult, because they can convince. They have this leverage as manipulators, as opportunistic without scruples. They have the leverage over the rest of us, because they just see you as useful idiots and tools, expendable peons, and cannot further to be used. And this is the history of the imperialistic civilizational paradigm. And I see so many intelligent people, and that's why how we question, how we frame reality, how we approach any subject, any issue, any event, historical event, is very important. How we question, how we think about it, not just why. It's important why things, but it's also very important how we think about those things, how we understand our inner life, how the concepts, the ideas, how narratives become dominant. They shape our identity, and they shape how we question reality, how we question the established knowledge, the conventional wisdom, which it is all related with what I'm trying to say about the representative democracy. Do we have, or most of us, since it supposes that we should be ruled by the majority, do the majority understand or question? Because as I always say, this is not about an intellectual understanding, because we can. It's easy to understand things understand concepts and ideas and this and that at the intellectual level. But that doesn't change anything, because the challenge is always needs to go through a transformative conscious process that each one of us, goes through this process by questioning our own convictions, our own ideological and the narratives that are supposed to structural narratives. How do we change the paradigm that governs, that is colonizing, that is instrumentalizing us to a different paradigm, to a different view of ourselves, of the world, of the reality that surrounds us, of how we relate to each other and with nature and with animals and with everything else? I mean, we don't. We have to go through this, even when we already understand the problems and the institutions and all the rest intellectually. It doesn't change, because it has to be a holistic change. It needs to go through an holistic comprehension and a conscious transformative process. Otherwise, we become victims, and this has nothing to do with culture. It doesn't matter how sophisticated we are, how much do you know about arts and literature, and not. I mean, is not that important. That, of course, I'm not, but that doesn't really make you or make us to go to the next level, to peel the layers. It can help, but it doesn't necessarily leads to that situation. Okay? It can. Because most of the time, we are weaponized, instrumentalized by what we watch, the movies we watch, the books we read, and all the rest of the infotainment industry, this mindless consumerism mentality, and all the rest. And we do not care, because we don't need to care, because we have this power of free decision, this individual choice, that we are so wise, that we understand so wonderfully the reality that every choice we make is a rational choice. At the political level, at the economic level, at any level of our lives. Right? Yes. I mean, this what can I say? What can I say that if you do not start by understanding how deep the deception, the web of deception where we live, that is ubiquitous. I mean, and this is what we really need to understand. What are the weaknesses, not the flaws, the weaknesses of our nature, of our nature as a socio-cultural species, that makes us vulnerable to deception, because we influence each other, because we are bits and pieces of other people's knowledge and experience. Why do I speak English or Portuguese? It's because it was a choice. I mean, I can't say that it was, to some extent, English was a choice. No, of course it was not a choice. Otherwise, I would be speaking French, because I started learning French. The first foreign language I started learning at school was French, not English. And I speak English, and I really have difficulties to speak French. I understand French, I can read French, I can write French, but I cannot speak really very fluently. So it was. Can I say it is just a choice? No, it was the environment, the socio-cultural environment. You know what? The movies, the music, the pop music, the pop literature, and everything else. What was Anglophone? Most of it. Since the French culture started losing steam, because before in a country like Portugal, it was a francophone culture. The references were francophone, and it changed. In my generation, it changed. We are being influenced totally by a different, by the Anglophone, by the English American culture, especially American movies. I mean, music. I mean, consumer culture. It was. This is one, in my opinion, the most powerful weapon the Americans developed was the cultural imperialism. They could influence basically all the world. It's still present everywhere. I have been in China, and I can say that China is in many ways an Americanized culture. And this is more dangerous than people think. And people don't give again, because people think this is about choice. It's not about choice. There is the environment, and we respond to the environment. We are shaped by the environment. That's why we are. I mean, because we are constantly the information, the ideas, the principles, the rules, and everything is going inside us every single moment that we are exposed to the environment. We learn them. They become normalized in our cognitive affective systems. They become part of who we are. Without us, there is no need at all to accept or reject. This is not about saying yes or no. When we say yes or no is already when we start to go through a conscious process of analytical process. And we start to care about facts, for example, about relating things, connecting dots. That's when it starts. Otherwise, we'll move. That's that's the reality of our representative democracies, and this is the rule by the minority. It is exactly the fact that we are being, we are in the phase that from liberal democracies that are illiberal, but okay, we call it liberal democracies. We are not going. We are paving the way to fascism. And why? Because we don't reflect. Because we don't frame the things the way we should, and we are only responding, adapting, being led. That's the idea. While we think we are choosing, we are free, choosing freely. Where are we going? In which party we going to vote? We don't understand that we are being led. That is not really. It seems conscious because it's us. It's our decision-making process. But we forget about how we are influenced, the mechanisms by which we are deceived and influenced. because we do not understand, or we do not care to understand, we are not trained to understand it, the process in a holistic way, to understand the relations within the system that is basically designed and upgraded to as a continuous process of controlling the discourse, controlling the cognitive, the perception, manipulating the perception to manufacture consent. And again, does it matter how sophisticated we are in terms of culturally, artistically, even science-based? I mean, science. You have technoscientism, scientism, and technoscientism. They are the new religions. Technofixism. This is religions. This is about faith and belief, not about reality. It's about control. It's about social engineering, socio-cultural engineering. And why? Because it's about keeping the very system that is at the core, keeping the system, keeping the plutoligarchy in power through this imperialistic, fascistic, transnational, globalist, if you will, institutionalized, especially through the financial system and the military, but also in the cultural ways. And this is why we need a totally different approach. It's not only, first we need to start to understand class, caste-based societal systems. That is basic. How this pyramid scheme has been set, and it evolved, and it was transformed and engineered and re-engineered in order to legitimize it politically and socially and culturally. And this is all part of the same process. That's why this is a process. This needs to be an holistic process of conscious transformation. That in order that we become it's not just because we need to. We cannot be one thing from 9 to 5. This is the perspective that we keep this compartmentalization needs to be eradicated. We need to have a whole vision of life, of life. Of participation in society, as political agents, as economic agents, as cultural agents, as human beings that have the right of a meaningful life. Honestly, I sometimes I almost run out of words to explain, because Nobody listens to me. That's maybe because I'm saying something right. All right, that's probably some truth in what I say. Otherwise, if I would be just playing with illusions and trying to say beautiful things and spiritual things, instead of or being attached to a school of thought, or whatever it is, maybe I would have some people following me. But since I'm just trying as honestly, as intellectually honestly as I can to explain how I dissect reality, how I understand the human condition, the sociocultural condition of the human nature, how I try to envision a society that is truly humanized. I don't want to call it Marxist or communist or socialist or this or that, not because I despise those ideas, okay? But because I want to transcend them. I want to understand. And I would like to see a culture that truly immunizes us against being manipulated. And that culture a culture that really, it is reproduced, that could be reproduced and improve these features, these cultural and social features that would not allow any class, that do not allow the people with the psychopathic and sociopathic, narcissistic, and opportunistic features of using that leverage to control the rest of society. Because it can always happen unless we have a culture, a political system, an economic system, and a societal system, and a civilization that truly is built on this idea that we have to reproduce a culture that makes us immune to being exploited, to being played by the tricks, the language tricks. Okay, always language. Always we need to go through language framing and logic fallacies, and all these things about how language is always there, because it's the main feature of human communication. So it's the main weapon of social engineering, of political and cultural engineering, that we cannot afford to skip, to think that we don't need to learn about it, that we are critical thinkers innately. If you don't train the critical thinking skills, you cannot become a critical thinker that able to have critical analysis of the very reality and to understand those who deceive you in a comprehensive and scientific way every day of your life, every day of our lives, because they need it. They could not keep control. They could not keep this kind of dysfunctional system, societal system, if they were not able to deceive us, if they were not able to use, to weaponize values and principles and knowledge, sound knowledge, and use it to instrumentalize us, to polarize us, to tribalize us in ways that favor them, to fanaticize us in ways that favor them, always against our interests, as being able to have really meaningful lives with freedom, as understand freedom as relational. Freedom is not something that you have. Freedom is relational. It has to be. It is in a relation with trust, truth, and justice. How do you imagine a freedom to exist if it's not in a relation to these other principles, just such as trust, justice, and truth? How do we imagine it? So, um, uh, I'm going to end it here for today. I would like people to give that these my words could be for some people some food for thought and discussion and the conversation that I believe we need to have. But if nobody listens, what can I do? I won't stop. I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing, because I truly believe I'm trying to be a human being. I'm trying to go to the roots of the nature of our very condition, and trying to understand and share my thoughts and my insights and my reflections. And I don't pretend to be an expert in anything. I just want to be and become a better human being, because that's what I think spirituality is. It's not about believing in whatever stuff. It's about becoming it's about the humanizing process of the human life, of the human experience, existential experience. So I'm going to end it here. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.